Hi friends, welcome to Lucid Study. This is Vijay Kumar, Indian Economy faculty. Today let's discuss in Indian Economy class 11 chapter 1, that is Indian Economy on the Eve of Independence. So before going to that, let's discuss two aspects in this particular Indian economy. That is, the first one is what is difference between economics and Indian economy. So economics is nothing but a set of principles which deals with optimum utilization of resources. If we apply principles of economics to the Indian economic system, you will get Indian economy. The second one is, so how important Indian economy in competitive examination. So if you compare, with respect to other subjects in UPSC or APPSC, more or less 15 to 20% of questions coming from Indian economy. So with this, you can understand the importance of Indian economy in competitive examinations. So let's discuss the chapter 1, that is Indian economy on the eve of independence. So in this particular chapter, they are trying to tell you the plight of Indian economy in two different timelines, that is pre-British era and during British era. So as you know, Britishers came to India more or less 18th century, and they ruled us more or less in a 200 years of time. So we are trying to discuss the plight of Indian economy in these two different timelines, that is pre-British era, during British era. So more or less in this lesson, there are some aspects that we are going to discuss these two different timelines, that is low level of economic development in this British era, and agriculture sector, industrial sector, foreign trade, demographic dimensions, occupational structure and infrastructure. These aspects we are going to discuss in this lesson. So let's move to the lesson. So first, the statement was given by the Viceroy of British India in 1894, Victor Alexander Virtus. What is that? India is a pivot of our empire. Pivot means a pin. If the empire loses any other part of its dominion, we can survive. But if we lose India, the sun of our empire will have set. It means, with this statement, you can understand, for Britishers, role of India is very, very important. So for India is very, very important for Britishers. That is you can understand with this statement. Let's move to next slide. The primary objective of this book, Indian Economic Development, is to familiarize you with the basic features of Indian economy and its development as it is today in the aftermath of independence. So aftermath of independence, why we are calling aftermath? Because the Britishers ruled India more or less 200 years. So generally, Britishers ruined our Indian economic system. So now in this lesson, we are trying to discuss how we are ruined during British era, and however, it is equally important to know something about the country's economic past, even as you learn about present state and future prospects. So it is equally important, you should try to know the roots of our Indian economy that is there in the during British era as well as the pre-colonial era. That is also equally important to know our roots of our economy. So in this lesson, we are going to discuss all these things. So let us first look at the state of Indian economy prior to the country's independence and form an idea of various considerations that shaped India's post-independent development strategies. The present economic system that we are having its deep roots in the past. Past, as I told you earlier, again our roots in two different timelines, that is pre-British era and during British era. So the structure of Indian present day economy is not just of current making. As I told you earlier, structure of present Indian economy is not just of current making. It has its roots steeped in history. I told you earlier, the structure of present economy is, it is not simply a current making. It has deep roots during pre-independence, that is those two timelines, that is pre-colonial era, during colonial era. When India was under British rule, which lasted for almost 2 centuries before India finally won its independence on 15th August 1947. So as I told you earlier, Britishers have ruled India more or less 200 centuries and we got independence 15th August 1947. So our present economic system have a steep roots in the past. Those more or less you can divide those particular past in two different timelines, that is pre-colonial era and during colonial era. So the sole purpose of British colonial rule, in India was to reduce countries to being a raw material supplier of Great Britain's own rapidly expanding modern industrial base. As you know, during 18th century and 17th century, more or less British have expansion of their industrial base. So they have used our India as a raw material source to their modern industry. So as I told you earlier, in those two different timelines, that is pre-British era and during British era. So pre-British era, we were having a wonderful agriculture sector and we were having a wonderful manufacturing, that is handicraft industry. But once Britishers came to India, they ruined our agriculture and they ruined our handicraft sector, and not only that, they have reduced our Indian economy as a raw material supplier to their economy, and they are making India as a market for their finished products. So that's what they are trying to tell you. As simply India was to reduce the country to being a raw material supplier to the Great Britain's on rapidly expanding modern industrial base. An understanding of the exploitative nature. See, exploitative nature, as I told you earlier, pre-colonial era we were having wonderful agriculture, wonderful industry. We were using wonderful, those time we used modern techniques. If you compare with other countries, we were using wonderful techniques in handicraft industry. Once Britishers came to India, they ruined agriculture, they ruined industry, and simply they are making our Indian economy as a raw material supply to their country. In that process, more or less entire thing is exploitative in nature. Of this relationship is essential for any assessment of the kind and level of development which the Indian economy has been able to attain over the last 7.5 decades. So after independence, more or less 7.5 decades, so we try to assess how exploitative the Britons are. Low level of economic development under the colonial rule and agriculture sector, industry sector and foreign trade, demographic dimensions and occupational structure and infrastructure. So these are aspects we are going to discuss in this lesson. The first one is low level of economic development under the colonial rule. So as I told you earlier, before pre-colonial era, we were having wonderful agriculture and as well as industry. At the time the development was very much substantive in nature and it is very much comfortable. But once British came to India, simply they ruined our economy and simply there is low level of economic development during colonial era. So India had an independent economy before the advent of British rule. That is what we have discussed. Before advent of British rule, we were having a wonderful economy in agriculture as well as industries. But though agriculture was the main source of livelihood for most people, those days also agriculture was the main livelihood for most people. And the country's economy was characterized by the various kinds of manufacturing activities. Those days still agriculture was the main livelihood. In industries also we were having a wonderful activities such as in handicraft industry we were having wonderful technology and we were having wonderful skillful people those days. In those days, most of the number of people are dependent on agriculture, but we were having wonderful industries those days. India was particularly well known for its handicraft industries. We have discussed earlier, despite most number of people dependent on agriculture, still we were having wonderful industry, that is handicraft industry. In the fields of cotton and silk textiles, metal, precious stone, works, etc. So in the field of cotton, silk textiles, precious stones, metals. So in those fields we were having wonderful handicraft industry. These products enjoyed a worldwide market based on the reputation of fine quality of materials used and the high standard of craftsmanship seen in all imports from India. So those days we were having wonderful trade routes. So we used to export our industrial products to the other countries through these routes. Sea routes are there. So those days, India used to export all these products. So India is known for highly craftsmanship products. So textile industry in Bengal, muslin is a type of cotton textile which had its origin in Bengal. It is very, very important. Muslin is known for a soft textile product. So textile industry in Bengal, muslin is a type of cotton textile which had its origin in Bengal. Particularly places in around Dhaka. As you know, Dhaka is capital city of Bangladesh, and Dhaka muslin had gained worldwide fame as exquisite type of cotton textile. So it is very, very important. Dhaka muslin had gained worldwide fame as exquisite type of cotton textile. So you may be asked, what is Deccan muslin? So simply Deccan muslin is a exquisite type of cotton textile, and not only that, we can also call it as a jamdari. So jamdari, Deccan muslin and malamal, those three are more or less similar, that is exquisite type of cotton textile. It is very, very important. Deccan muslin, malamal and jamdari, these three are more or less, it is an exquisite type of cotton textile and which is there in Dhaka. So foreign travelers also use it to refer it as a Malamal Shahi and Malamal Khas. Malamal Shahi and Malamal Khas. So Malamal Shahi, Malamal Khas and Jamdari, Deccan muslin, these are all exquisite type of cotton textile. So very, very important, that is endemic to that particular region, that is Dhaka. So the economic policies pursued by the colonial government in India were concerned more with the protection and promotion of the economic interest of their home country. So once the British came to India, simply their policies is to protect and promotion of their own country. So they did not bother to improve our capital goods industry, and they did not bother to reduce our poverty, and they did not bother to reduce our unemployment. So simply they keep on promoting and protecting their own country during those 200 years. Policies brought about fundamental changes in structure of Indian economy. Obviously, as those exploitative policies brought a lot of fundamental changes in our Indian economy. As I told you earlier, during pre-colonial era, we were having wonderful agriculture as well as industries. So as they have ruined during those 200 years, obviously there was a structural change in our Indian economy. So simply transforming country into supplier of raw materials, and consumer of finished industrial products from Britain. Simply they have reduced our country as a supplier of raw material to their country, and not only that, simply they are making India as a market for their finished products. Obviously, the colonial government never made any sincere attempt to estimate India's national per capita income. So what is per capita income? Obviously, total income by total population. So as they keep on exploiting our India's country's economic system, so they never bother to measure India's per capita income. Per capita income is total income by total population. So some individual attempts which were made to measure such income yielded conflicting and inconsistent results. Among the notable estimators, Dadabhai Naoroji and William Digby, finally Sridhar, V.K.R.V. Rao and R.C. Desai, who was the first man to try to calculate per capita income. He is Dadabhai Naoroji. More or less at the time, Dadabhai Naoroji, more or less 20 rupees is the per capita income in those days, whose estimates during the colonial period was considered very significant. However, most studies did find the country's growth of aggregate and real output during the first half of the 20th century, that is 1900 to 1947, was less than 2%, coupled with a meager 0.5% growth in per capita output per year. As you know, first half of the 20th century, that is 1900 to 1950, it is less than 2% growth, coupled with a meager 0.5% growth in per capita output per year. V.K.R.V. Rao and Dadabhai Naoroji try to estimate per capita income and try to calculate national income those days.